Hey, I pushed the right button.
Good job.
All right.
Yay.
All right, so this is our post up.
Okay.
After the big lesson.
Okay.
So.
Anyone with a radio who is out and about, Gabriel McIntosh is not in period 7.
He's actually in school right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and start.
Okay.
So, how do you think the lesson went?
I thought it went pretty well. Actually ran out of time.
Mr. Miller, are you still up on the second floor?
I am. I'm meeting with the teacher right now.
Thank you.
I thought it went well, but I ran out of time. I wanted to revisit the targets a little bit at the end and maybe do an exit card, and then I had to stop with the video. So I wanted to do, I tried to, but we were running out of time at the end. So I would have given myself better pacing, more time.
Oh,
so that I
okay.
would have not ran out at the very end of time.
All right.
I felt like it was good. I just wanted to do more at the very end to kind of wrap it all up. I did a little bit. I kind of said something, but the time had went out and we were running out of time.
Well, and I imagine, depending on the class size, that probably fluctuated a little bit
It
too.
does. Like that class, it depends. Like sometimes I can get all the way through something and have extra time, and then sometimes it does depend on the class.
Okay.
The class size and the dynamics of the class
Yeah.
size.
Now, ideally, we would have done this on Thursday or Friday,
Mhm.
but with PD,
Right, we couldn't.
yeah, everything got pushed back.
No, that's fine.
So, if you can, remember back to what was the main objective of the lesson?
The lesson was over the 5 themes of geography, and it was over movement
Mhm.
and location?
Yes.
Location, movement
Yep.
and location.
Yep.
So we were going over those 2 because we're going over the 5 themes, and tomorrow we have one more, and then they have a quiz, and then we revisit those throughout the year.
Okay. So what were the students able to do as a result of the lesson?
I think I was able to ask them some I did more than the next day on Friday with it, but really they were able to come up with personal connections to movement and location. So the next day we revisited it back a little bit, and they were able to talk about, well, I did, during the lesson, I did some things like look at your name, look at your clothing tag, and where does your clothes come from,
Mhm.
and then I think that gave them a personal connection to where things come from and how things move. And then the next day we actually talked about that, because someone went home, was looking at stuff at home, like, oh, this came from here at home and stuff, and we talked about that. I always try to go back to personal connections, and then they can remember those for the test.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that a little bit more the next day too. Same with location. I think it kind of ties it all together for them.
All right. And so, what did you do to help accomplish the whole objective and what they learned?
I try to do interactive and like personal connection stuff. So I talked, and then I let them talk, and then I did videos with like kind of songs with them to help them kind of stick in their head. And then I did, the thing where a couple of things, but one was look at the tag on your shirt and where was it made, and kind of talked about movement in that way. We talked about, oh gosh, I can't remember, location, the same thing, like, where's stuff located. Oh, then we did the human environment interaction a little bit at the end. So then we got into conversation of how we interact with our environments. So personally, get the kids involved somehow with connections to
Sure.
their lives.
And I noticed even with the video, it covered quite a bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was what, 3-4 minutes?
It was 3 minutes, I
Yeah.
think.
So.
They like videos. A lot of them get really engaged. They like really just, they're like focused in when you put.
So what are some of the, what would be some examples of techniques or strategies that you felt worked?
I like to do like formative assessment as I'm going. So then working with small groups, asking questions one-on-one to kids as they're kind of, like when they were doing the tag on the shirt thing, I kind of walked around and we talked about that. I like to do things that makes it relevant to the kids, because I think they're not engaged if they think there's no reason why they have to learn it. So I try to kind of pull in things that makes them realize it is relevant, like the thing where our clothes come from or where do our video games come from, and I think that helps them put a connection to it. And then I try to do not just me standing up front the whole time and talking the whole time and lecturing.
Right.
So I try to do the GRR where I do a little bit, I share my knowledge, I ask some questions, but then I kind of let the kids get involved and then let them work with other kids and kind of spread that out so that, and the next day they did a more of individual thing with it, but I try to do all those parts.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just me talking, because that's boring.
So if you were to say, what was the one thing that you thought was the most effective?
Probably the video, because I felt like they were really just zoned in when I showed that video. They were like on watching it, yeah. And it was kind of corny, and I told them it's cheesy. I said, it's full of cheese, it's really cheesy, and they're like, oh. But they were really staring at it. Oh, I showed the movement one. So yeah, I think they really got a lot of, it was educational. It had a lot of good facts to it. It talked about movement, how things move, showed examples.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really watching it, and then they were kind of singing it at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what would you, if you were to do anything different in the future with a similar lesson, what would it be?
Like what I did in this one, what would I do
Yeah,
again?
if you was gonna do something different, if you didn't think something went like you thought it should have, or.
Well, I went too fast. It went too long. I think I would have liked to have had more time at the end. Where
Okay,
they
so just the pacing of
Just
it?
the pacing. I would have liked to have more time to go like revisit the targets longer. Like I only just did it really fast because we were watching that video. I don't like to just stop like that. I kind of did and just sort of pointed back to the targets. I wish I would have had a little bit more time at the end to kind of
Okay.
revisit some of that and wrap it up a little better.
So what are some different ways you assess your students' learning?
I do formative every single day. And sometimes I do that just verbally or with conversation, or sometimes with like maybe a little exit card. I did exit cards today in the lesson I did. We did 9/11 today. I did a little exit card. Sometimes I just do that. But those are ways I do it, is either I watch them in groups, I talk to them, or I move around and talk to them, or I actually give them a formative assessment. And then of course the summative assessments that we have not as often too.
I noticed throughout your lesson, the formative, because there were times that you would address something, and if a student didn't get it, you'd go back and address it with the class.
Right.
And so it happened.
And I try to do that.
Numerous
I don't
times.
want to embarrass the kids, so I
No, and you did it in
that's why I
such a
do it that
manner
way.
to where if you weren't paying attention to that group, they wouldn't have known.
Right.
And so.
Right. And I also do that because I don't want to so when I was a kid, I never wanted to be called out by a teacher
Mhm,
and look
right.
like I was asking a stupid question.
Yep.
So if they answer I know the answer's not right, or they're kind of confused, instead of maybe addressing that kid, I do say it again in front of everybody just so they hear it again.
Yeah. Because there were once or twice that you'd go to another group, talk about something, and then go up and address it because you were kind of working your way back towards
And
the
sometimes
front
I
of the
notice
room.
a lot of them are getting the same, they
Mhm.
have the same questions, so formatively, okay, they're not getting this, then I go back and address it.
Sure.
I've even done give me 5 and stopped everybody before and said, hey guys, I just want to share something, I've noticed a lot of you aren't getting this part, and I might just tell everybody once
Oh, okay.
too.
So what were some student behaviors that you observed during the lesson?
That class likes to blurt out a little bit, so I have to kind of keep my thumb on a couple of boys. They didn't do too bad that day, I don't think. I'm trying to remember. And I haven't moved since then, but just remember to take their turn, and nothing real bad, just sometimes just the goofy, funny,
Mm-hmm.
kind of middle school behaviors, but not bad. I just try to kind of get them to be quiet, or give them that mom look, or just go with it sometimes too, and then they just stop. That's about all I usually get's the blurting. I don't usually
Okay.
get much else.
Well, and I noticed that you do a
Or
couple different.
proximity.
Yeah, you used a couple different techniques depending on the student
Yeah.
and how many times you'd had to refer because there were.
Right.
just a
Sometimes I
couple.
walk near them. I forgot
Mhm.
about that one. I'll just stand by them, and then kind of they know. I'll walk near that area without even saying anything, and sometimes that works.
Right.
Or I might walk near them and then kind of look at them and they know, or something like that.
Yeah. So what things could you have done to increase student participation while questioning?
I don't like to ask questions in whole groups, but I did that one because it was just a whole group. That first part was a whole group lesson. But a lot of times I like just to give the kids questions in groups and let them kind of talk about it.
Mhm.
Some more inquiry and student generated, either questions or answers without me asking the questions, they come up with the questions.
Because you did it that day too. You asked a question, and there were times where the students were working with the group, with your group,
Right.
and then there were other times where you would ask a question and you would get feedback.
Right. So I like it more when they end up posing it and they answer it and they solve it than me doing it.
So,
Because
okay.
I want them to be able to do stuff like that, problem solve.
Mm-hmm.
So they can do that someday in the world, hopefully.
There you go. So what things would you replicate? Let me try that again. What things would you replicate in future lessons?
A lot of it. I like doing GRR. I like doing me a little, them with partners, them on their own. I like that because I don't want it to be me the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to do that as much as I can. Sometimes maybe those times get a little different with each one, but I try to. I like doing visual stuff. They love videos. They love anything that gets any technology. They love computers. they're really engaged when I do stuff like that. If it's educational and they kind of just stay focused on it. I like when they work with other people. I always try to incorporate that every day, that it's not just on their own, it's not just me. So every day they have a chance in here to talk to somebody or work with somebody. And it may not be like a long time, but at least that happens every day. So
Okay.
those things I like to do.
So how do you differentiate your instruction after you've gathered information from your different assessments?
I usually gather it, I figure out, did I, mess up and kind of, they didn't understand something, so I reteach it. If I have kids in the room that are, on an IEP and they need something kind of in a different way, then I might, shorten something I give them, or sit with them and help them a little bit, or give them some kind of an aid that might help them a little bit. Maybe get them started with like sentence frames or whatever they need that kind of scaffolds their learning. I try to think of that ahead of time. Sometimes I don't, so I have to do it like on the fly. Like I kind of have to go sit by them and kind of figure out how to help them. But
Okay.
well, all of that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So how do you plan your instruction after you look at your student work?
I look at it, and then, like I said, I figure out, can we go on from here? Everything, I like everything to tie together. So then if we can go on, we go on to the next thing that kind of ties in or, links to what we're doing. If I've missed something, if something seems to be, apparent that I didn't cover right or they didn't get, I always make sure I reteach it. I never just go on. That's why my plan book, I don't just, stuff erases and stuff gets arrowed and moved, because I don't always teach day by day no matter what and just have to go on. I like make sure they understand it.
And actually, I think you did that in one of the times I was in here, where you started the class off with, hey, I want to go back and touch on this.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first time.
It might have been. I do that sometimes because it might have been something I didn't think they quite understood or
Mhm.
got, and I try to say it in a different way or redo it.
Okay, so now this is a tough question.
Okay.
What was the body language you noticed during the video?
Body language of like the kids, you mean? I don't know. I mean, I think they mostly pay attention.
Well, we were talking about it earlier.
Did we? What did we say? Oh, when they were shaking their heads on the other thing.
Well,
Yeah.
because there was a rap song going on.
Oh, they were singing.
They were
singing.
And you were talking about how everybody was
They were doing
focused
that.
in,
Big time.
which I found interesting because you kind of downplayed it like it being a cheesy video, but with good information.
Yeah.
But the kids loved it.
They did like it.
Yeah.
And sometimes they think stuff's like kiddie, or they think it's like babyish, Like even when, sometimes I'll even get out a picture book and read to them, like for certain things.
Mhm.
And they love it.
Mhm.
So they love anything that's educational, but still they think it's a little cheesy. They like it.
You gotta be a little careful just because of the age.
Right, because of the age. But they still liked it. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure.
Yeah, I was surprised myself by how well they were attentive.
Oh, they love it. They love videos that are like that.
And was that consistent throughout the day?
Yes.
Okay.
And today we did 9/11 stuff, and you would have thought they were glued to, and I didn't show like the typical like Twin Towers falling. I showed a video of these guys that came in with like ferries and fishing boats
Mhm.
and took people off of the island, and it wasn't the typical 9/11 video, and they were just glued today.
Okay.
Yeah, they like watching stuff.
So how much wait time do you allow for students when answering questions?
I try to wait a while. I can tell usually when a kid doesn't know, and I don't want to embarrass them, but sometimes I might even go back and make sure later that they understood what I asked. But I wait a little bit. I give them time to think and process. But if it kind of drags a little bit, I might have somebody help them, or I might come back later.
And I kind of questioned that because sometimes you don't want to put the kid on the spot.
Right.
And that's where I noticed as you were, some of the times you would allow a little bit more time or a little less time based
Right.
on the student response.
Because I kind of know them a little bit already, and I kind of know if they might know it or not.
Mhm.
And like, with middle school kids, you have to be really careful. They get really embarrassed, so I
Mhm.
don't want to embarrass somebody.
Right. Yeah. So I noticed that during that lesson you had students pick their own partner. What are some other ways that you match students when they're working?
I've done sticks before. I have their names on sticks. I haven't done that this year, but I have their names in there on sticks. I did that in 6th grade more, but haven't tried that. I think they'd be okay with it though. I've done that. I have this thing. It's an app on the Chromebook. It can generate partners. I don't typically group them ability-wise. I try not to do that. I try to do it more random, but there are a few times I do, depending on what it is that they're doing. There are a few times it makes more sense for me to let them pick, or for me to pick and then do it sometimes ability, but I don't often do that.
Okay.
I try not to.
All right, so here's the good news.
Okay,
I went through,
okay.
just based on what you'd covered,
Uh-huh.
and I went through the Iowa teaching standards.
Oh, okay.
Basically what I did was, and these are things that I was able to view
Okay.
during the lesson, I just highlighted them.
Oh, wow.
And so, as I went through this, standard 1, 2, 3, and
Mhm.
4, you knocked out of the park.
Yeah.
Standard 6 was real strong.
Yeah,
And with the type of lesson, obviously standard 5, 7, and 8,
right.
those are different
Because I
types
didn't
of
do an
things.
assessment.
Right, well,
Right.
you didn't do an assessment, you know, you're not doing professional development.
Right.
Although you implemented a lot of the strategies that we've talked about before.
Okay,
And so,
that's good to know. You asked me which ones I was doing. I'm like, I don't know.
yeah.
I just come in and do my
Right.
job.
Cause I did ask you
Yeah,
that.
you did, and
you're
I was
like,
like, I need to get my little thing
So-
out, because I don't know them. I mean, I know them, but.
Right, well,
Yeah.
you're not gonna have them memorized. And so I just kinda went through and
Oh,
just
cool.
highlighted them, I'm like,
I
wow.
like that.
And so I was kind of impressed with, like I say, how well you had them covered.
Yeah, thank you.
Other things I noticed, some of your strengths.
Okay.
Student engagement. Holy cow. Throughout the entire lesson, I kept looking at different students engaged. And a lot of that, you know, you were kind of complaining about the pacing, but at the same time, that pacing was a benefit because you keep it moving, you keep it
Mhm.
interesting, you don't focus on anything too long, and so it's easier to keep the students engaged.
I try to.
Because you had it hopping. I mean, just boom, boom, boom.
I try to
It's
make a
another
rule, like,
thing.
I don't wanna talk my focus lesson, I do not want it to be more than 8 minutes. And
Right.
usually it's only about 5 or 6 minutes, cause I feel like that's just enough.
Mhm.
And then when I do blended learning, I do the same thing. I do groups of like 4 or 5 for about 8 to 10 minutes, that's it. Then they do something else, we rotate.
Well, and that's like when you look at how that whole lesson was broke up. You had the thing where you were doing the thing on the whiteboard.
Mhm.
And
Oh yeah, I forgot about that, yeah.
Again, you hit it, you got some information, you were
Moved
drawn,
on.
and then you moved on to
Cause
the
that
next
could've
thing.
taken a whole class period.
Oh, yeah.
And,
But you
Yeah.
spent enough time, and then after the kids, and it was interesting to listen to the conversations,
yeah,
because even after you would write something up, I'm listening to other students.
were they saying stuff?
They were going right along with the lesson.
Oh, cause I can't hear
So,
them all
yeah,
back here.
they weren't, I mean, they were all engaged, even though
Good.
they weren't interacting with you, they were interacting with each
Good.
other about what you were talking
That's
about.
good.
And so that was kind of impressive. The variety of teaching standards that you used, like I said, you kept it engaging, you kept it moving, just fast paced. You'd be a very successful kindergarten teacher.
I do have
Well, there you go.
kindergarten, I used to teach, preschoolers.
I really liked how you connected the learning from things that students had learned from last year,
Yeah,
and you connected it to where they were going to be going either throughout this year or
Right.
next year. And so by making those ties, because it was amazing when you talked about last year, how many students were able to say, oh yeah, I remember doing that.
right.
And so that was
And I
kinda
had that
neat.
advantage because I taught 6th grade. I've
Right.
been an instructional coach, so I've seen 8th grade.
Yeah.
I kind of know what's happening before and
Mhm.
after they leave.
I liked how you brought in current events.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Because again,
Yeah.
the students see that, they know about it, and I was amazed at how many of them could add to the conversation.
They can.
Throughout your lesson, I don't know if you're aware of this, you made a personal connection with every student.
Did I?
Mhm.
I usually do.
Every
I try to talk
student
to every
in
kid.
your
Even
class.
my kid class of 28, I tried to say something to
Yeah,
every one of them.
every student, you went around and had
It's
that
hard.
personal one-on-one. And so that was pretty impressive. I liked your mix of questions, because you went from real simple to higher order. And so that kept the students engaged. You led the student learning through so much personal connection. You were talking about the shirts,
Oh yeah.
you know, and so just that, the video games, the whole bit.
Right.
And then for the students to go back and even come back the next day
Yeah,
and
they
tell
told
you.
me they looked at stuff at home because
Yeah.
they thought everything was made in China, and then they realized, oh no, it's not. And then they went home and started looking at everything
Mhm.
to see where
But
it's
again,
made.
it's that awareness, and now they're taking it to the next level.
They went
Because,
home and
yeah, you presented it in such a way, it made them interested in the
right,
whole bit.
right.
That wasn't an assignment,
No, they just
but
did
they
it.
took it on their own.
Right.
So, excellent job of modeling the guided practice, the independent work.
Good.
You have that down to an art. It was amazing. I love how you continue to assess the students. And like I said, you just kept going around.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple students that maybe weren't focused as much as they needed to be, or were fluffing off a little bit, but you were able to stop, find out what the issue was,
Right.
and either go back and reteach, or just adjust it with that personal group.
Right.
Of course, the standards and criteria, like I say.
Yeah, that's great you did that.
Yeah.
It's good to see where I'm at.
Yeah. So, anyway, those were just some things I noted.
Okay.
So-
So what do I need to work on?
Well, that's
I
the
li-
question for you.
I like
So
knowing
based
what
on
I need
all
to work
this,
on.
what actions or ideas has this triggered for you? Is there anything that you feel that you need to grow in?
Yeah, probably, I think one of the things I'd like to do is, like I was trying to say earlier, is like getting the kids more involved. Cause I know with 21st century learning, they want kids to be able to sit and answer their own, come up with their own questions and answer them more. So I'd like to either like pose them with questions and let them sort of like do brain, like thinking and problem solving, or letting them come up with them without me doing so much of that. Does that make sense? Like, I feel
Yeah,
like I
kinda
ask them too many questions and I want them
You
to
want
do
it to
it.
be more student-led.
Yeah,
So,
and I think I
here's
am
the
pretty much
topic.
that way, but I'd like to be more
mhm.
than I am. Like, I would love to have one of those classrooms where I didn't have any tables in here, and, or if I did, they were like my classroom was last year, like groups going
Mhm.
on, and I got different things going on. I haven't gotten there yet, so I wanna get back to that. Because I think that they learn more that way. When they learn in small groups, they get little doses from me,
Mhm.
and then they work with their peers, and they're like, I don't know, problem solving and come up with things. I'd like to get back to that more.
Sure.
I'm
The
not
only
there
thing
yet.
that I noticed throughout your entire lesson, and maybe you know the student better than I, the boy that was sitting over here has an IEP.
Mm-hmm.
When you said pick a partner, and the only thing that would concern me about that is, okay, if it's a student who's not real,
I know. Yeah,
not real confident, other students are gonna shy away.
right,
Are you setting him up to where he's not gonna have a partner?
right. And he didn't have one.
Right, and
Yeah.
he didn't, but that may have been a personal choice, but I also wonder, is it isolating him because he's not gonna have the confidence?
Right.
Because he does struggle.
Could be.
And so, but I did notice that as you talked to him, he knew the information.
Right. That's
So,
right.
but again, that goes back to his confidence.